Sup, everybody, this is Karak with ACG, and as always, it's my continuing mission to bring you reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. Xcom has had a long career. It's been one of my favorites since it introduced its dark alien version of chess into the digital realm back in 1994. And who would have thought, even back then, that fielding a team of ever-expanding expendable enemies would be so exciting, even if most of them expired? That's right, probably none of us. It's mostly due to the drug-like cyclic game loop of prep and disaster and recover and prep again and disaster. Wait, what's 99% even mean anymore? Prep, disaster, success, and then prep again. And those are the things that kept you up at 3 a.m. the following morning and never once asking yourself, what in the hell am I doing with my life? XCOM games have been a series of invasions and nightmare creatures and heroes with high-tech hazardous weapons that are so badass they might as well just be shaped like tombstones for decades. It's interesting to look back, though, at the stable of games and see that really only one has had a stumbling block, and that's Bureau, a third-person shooter. So how would another game that does a couple things different fare? Well, that's why we're here today. We're going to check out the review for Xcom Chimera Squad, which does away with the endless cavalcade of customizable Codys and little adjustable Andys, and instead sticks you with a particular named set of characters as you and your Chimera Squad try to keep peace in the delightfully atmospherically named City 31. Xcom Chimera Squad is out April 24th for $9.99, and on the 1st of May it raises to $20. Let's see how it did, shall we? As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe and make sure to hit the all notifications button. That helps you get all the data all the time. Let's jump into graphics first. XCOM games, I think, have never really been a slouch when it comes to their presentation, and Chimera follows right in line in most places. Almost everything from weird alien workings to these man-made constructions are destructible in XCOM, and what isn't can still be licked down the side with fire or engulfed in some massive cloud of mysterious belly gas from one of your teammates whose favorite attack is just to log a big old loogie of poisonous goo at everyone's feet and see what happens. XCOM has always hinged on the environments reflecting the changing strategy of the battle. And as the years have progressed and the technology allowed it to do so, almost everything can now be shot, rammed, ran, or headbutted through. And that is absolutely a cornerstone to why this game feels so alive and dynamic when you play it. And it's odd to me because so many games in the genre are still stuck in a worldview entrenched in some kind of pseudoscience where everything's built to the same exacting chemical standards that makes Wolverine's animanium nutsack impenetrable to damage. But when you're sneaking behind an alien kettle boiling some noxious yellow sludge and then hedge your bets on a character skill that's sole job is to just eat away at the barricades in front of the enemy and reduce their cover, it is damned rewarding when it pulls off. Even with these smaller levels than the larger ones in the main XCOM games, which I'll talk about in a second, destruction of items, both explosion producing and cover reducing, gives new ways to progress. And what I found is add that to the smaller environments and you actually get some unique strategies that are solely within Chimera that weren't really in the main XCOM games. That clean environmental work mixed with the excellent graphical style and atmosphere have always been woven into something that I feel makes XCOM look unique. That's why the comic book style cutscenes and momentary interludes that are in Chimera do not always work for me. It's a cost-saving measure to be sure and a perfect color match for the neon purples and greens and blues and pinks of the super saturated weird world of City 31. They seem like they would fit fine, but they actually don't. It's still way above many other titles, but I think that the game would have really benefited from 3D models for any of those cutscenes, even if they were just standing there, many of which you can actually see in the armory anyway when you go into that section to look over your group. That would have probably worked to draw everything slightly more together into a cohesive representation. It's not bad, it's just a little bit noticeable. But that does bring us to something else that's absolutely noticeable, and that's the animations, which are excellent. And it's the small touches in moments that make XCOM such a unique cornerstone for future games in the genre, and something that other developers look at. They visually inform the gamer of what's going on so well, like when switching between enemies, each one reacts and looks around a corner at you, or peeks above a barrel, or in some way indicates who they are, which can help when you're neck deep in alien sandwich and it's hard to tell the difference between the bread, the bologna, and the ball sack, because not only in half of the level it is neon pink, but the damned alien has a giant pink head. Or when you level down your gun onto the berserker and you can see the drool coming out of its mouth as it lusts to see what basically Special Agent probably tastes like. Games like this have to have a visual transaction between them and the gamer, and the more complex and interactive that environment is, the more information needs to be parsed out and taken in by the gamer. And small elements like that can create a cohesive feel to the visual information you get. Well, not the drool one. I don't know what type of information that's giving you, but it looked really cool. When it comes to other issues with the graphics, nothing's really been fixed from the XCOM titles prior. There's a couple issues like how loosely the enemies face you when you attack them. For instance, sometimes guns don't really point at enemies, and suddenly they're taking damage from this jacked up dude with a flamethrower who's just smashing the fire button like a Kino machine and facing the opposite direction. While none of those have been really repaired, I didn't expect it in this title. It's roughly where XCOM 2 War of the Chosen was when it comes to performance. Settings that heavily impact the FPS are the expected ones, with a massive dip when using SSAO at the highest level with shadows following right behind that. Now with those on their highest settings with the 2080 Ti, I was still getting mid to high 90s and 80s at 4K. It would fluctuate. A 1080 can easily get 1440p with those settings adjusted. I gotta tell you, SSAO, huge hit, so watch for that one. What you get is a game that still looks impressive despite a couple drops here and there. And that brings us to sound, music, and voice.
Today. Whee!
Breach as soon as you can. Grey Phoenix is about to turn our VIP into a very messy example.
No time like the present.
And the first one we're going to do is sound. So the sounds overall, they're fine. Let's remember that with a lot of the weapons here, you're shooting really excited atomic particles at each other, so it wouldn't sound like anything unless you could record the sound of your balls being X-rayed at like 1,000 times the highest level. The sci-fi sounds of XCOM remain, and it's done well. One thing that helps so much with every weapon, though, is when it impacts cover over an enemy, it has a unique sound of the bullets bouncing off whatever that cover is. So you rarely hear any gun just shooting through something. You can hear the wall crack or the metal shear, which works to draw a connection between the aggressor and the defender. Also, the psi abilities, I like all the sound effects there. And that brings us to music. Listen, no one's going to think this is going to be as thick or as varied or as a full title, but what is here works well for the locations and the mood. A couple of the battle tracks are very good, with one symphonic piece backed up with some excellent digital effects that I really did like. Many XCOM games, you can spend a large amount of time in the menus or in the tactical decision areas, and that's the same here, especially out of battle. And Chimera's various tracks that play there, they're fine. They fit, and I like them. And that brings us to voice. They're here, and I don't like them. It's weird most of the time. For instance, the one-liners and the jokes back and forth are terrible and just slow. Some of them don't really even indicate two people are joking. It's like someone took random words and cut them out and then put them together in Audition or Fruity Loops. Story elements are fine, as are the cutscenes that push the story forward, or the various goofy commercials and reports from the street, but the characters themselves, these new people you're supposed to care about, just do not hit it off for me. It sounds like actor number 444 in a giant dude suit. I don't know why it's done this way. It hurts because they do have a number of characters that are special here. Remember, this is your named XCOM squad. It's like announcing an Avengers movie, then replacing them all with voiced B actors. Nobody would do that. Okay, well, and that brings us to gameplay and a bit about the story. First off, as we already know, XCOM Chimera Squad is not like the prior XCOM games in a couple ways. Chimera Squad follows 11 main characters 5 years after the war as you stop 3 warring factions in your job to keep peace in City 31. That's right. Aliens and humans working together, and sectoids with pants. Anyway, so you basically take over Chimera Squad, working with a group of others as a side police force, doing things the cops can't do across a series of different missions. As you progress, characters level up, get new skills, you develop new weapons, and you further the story, all told in an overarching story view when not in combat, and of course that typical 3/4 view when in combat. Your main overarching goal in Chimera Squad is to watch over the city's anarchy, as well as your own supplies of Illyrium, intel, and money, which can be gained by doing smaller as well as main missions, with each currency allowing you to construct new items, explore new clues, or field secondary teams, and buy items respectively. Most of the game is from this view when you're not in battle. You can have the city map where you can see more data about each burb and what their anarchy level is, and if it gets up to a certain level and then stays there for one round, it raises the whole city level. Here, you can also take different missions. Assembly is where you upgrade and research weapons, not only your own, but the enemies you face, unlocking more types as you encounter them. The Spec Ops tab is where one man or woman takes on smaller missions that don't have you engage in active battles, but just makes the agent unavailable for a side mission, each with its own rewards. Training, now this is very cool. Not only can you adjust specific parameters of any agent that you have, like giving them a larger health pool or giving them the ability to carry more items, but also, like a superhero physical rehab center, when heroes go down in combat, they're out for the count until you return home, And at that point, their attributes can be lowered if they have a scar from battle. Think a bum knee, a trick hip, or some other physical issue. You can put them through training to show them how to deal with the wound and get those attributes back. That was a really cool system. You also have the armory, where agents are promoted and experience that they have gained is used to get skills, gaining either a single skill or choosing from 2 skills for every level up. It's here you also outfit your characters with gear. Now, if you're hoping to festoon your agent so he look like some kind of goddamn wobbly parade float with items, you can't. When it comes to the armor, you can only tint them the color you want. This is to indicate a combined police force uniform. It's up to you if you're okay with that. Next up is supply. These are the items that you have and outfit characters with and buy. The next tab is your investigation tab. This is a summary list of your investigations, which I'll talk about in a moment. It tells you what step you're on and what information you have. I really like this as well. Lastly, you have the scavenger market. This comes up when available. It's a black market of stolen and questionable equipment. Think buying something that you would risk your life on from Bud K or a questionable white van in a dark alley. But here, at least most of them actually work. At some point, you're going to take on missions. Missions can be events that occur that just move forward throughout the day and give you some much needed currencies, or an actual battle. When you identify the mission you want to take, you can outfit 4 agents for it. These 4 agents have their own stats like health, mobility, aim, armor, dodge, and crit, as well as the occasional specific skill like Psi. They also have a number of weapon slots and item slots. When you outfit them, you then head out. You can also have 1 reserve slot, but not for an agent. It has to be for an android. I'll talk about those in a second. Now, this introduces you to another section of the game and is one of my favorites, and that's the breach. Every location has a breach to begin the battle with. Your agents are able to enter some rooms in multiple ways, maybe through a grate, a window, over a ledge, or busting through a door. You'll have a general knowledge of the bonuses that those entries give you due to intel you got earlier, like a +1 to damage for all your allies, but it can also be negative, like a -1 or enemies being harder to hit. And some breach areas require items that you need to buy to get through them, like weave kits to let you snake through grates, to breach charges to blow out walls, or cards to open doors. At this point, you're setting up who goes first or last, and that can matter as well. For instance, one character charges into battle and can scare enemies, while another can heal you prior to leaping in. So sometimes it matters on who goes in first. Then you breach. This is with you able to pull off various attacks, some of them specific to characters and breaching in particular that you get in the skill list. Once the last attack of the breach is done, your characters rush to find spots for cover. Think of that as your pre-attack attack. I love the breach mechanic. I just do. It's because not only are there many different ones of them, but if you crank the difficulty up, you can find yourself having to really decide if you want to pad your armor with more metal or slink into something more comfortable and leap down a sewer grate to the world's worst cocktail party just to get an edge on somebody. Do you leap through a window and get a bonus where your first strike will hit no matter what, but that character is marked for the rest of the encounter? How many encounters will this particular mission have can also end up being something that you have to decide. Now, speaking of those encounters, you have the individual actions each character takes. When everyone's done, that ends the turn. And after all your turns are done and you fulfilled any goals, you are done with that encounter, or you move on to another one depending on the mission. Some missions have 1, some have more. And all of this will then be taken into account when you do the initiative and you jump into the actual main battle proper, which is in the top right-hand corner, and it's the timeline. That's your initiative for everything. You can see who's attacking and when. Some characters and actions do have the ability to raise or lower that as well. For example, teamwork or other actions from different characters may have you high-fiving somebody and they have a free action or the ability to move up in the timeline. And of course, being the quickest means you can punch somebody or shoot somebody the fastest, but you don't always want to kill them because, as I said, there's a currency in the game called info, and you can get more by subduing them and bringing them back to the base and continue to beat the shit out of them until they explode like a piñata filled with old library cards and give you some more info. And you might be asking, well, does that mean it's still XCOM? It is, very much so. It just has some interesting changes, but that means that the cathartic retribution of overwatching some assholes. He sprints around a corner into your cone of killing. You just get to watch his ventilated corpse slide effortlessly by as you shoot him is still there all the time. And you add to that the changes in strategy from the tighter locations that I mentioned before, and you have something that does feel unique in the space. And speaking of unique, Chimera handles death uniquely from the other titles. If you fall in battle, here in Chimera you have temporary replacements, which sound awesome, But they're not. They're androids, or basically Roombas with high-powered ordnance that only come in after they're actually needed. So you end up sucking a lead NyQuil, you pass out, and one of these shimbobs flies in, which makes you wonder, why wait? That's like having a basketball team where the fifth guy just stands around off court and there's a quick breakaway and he tries to fucking sprint back in. Luckily, they can be upgraded and outfitted with most of the items the main characters can, but they are only temporary and they can't be fielded as a main character. And once you've completed all the encounters in that mission, you head back. And of course, this is where you're going to want to buy any items that you may have used. But the most important thing, guys, check those wounds. They are rough. They can make a massive impact on how you move forward through the game. If you get into a high-stakes gunfight with 3 rampaging aliens and a shambling dude who looks like he's made of pizza, you're going to come home looking like you banged a fucking alligator anyway, let alone if 2 or 3 of your guys have huge attribute minuses. So sending them off to get their wounds repaired while taking time can be the difference between the next engagement or just dying. Now, speaking of those agents, where XCOM games are packed to the gills with customizable characters and sort of a who's who of bipedal heroes all ready to meet the alien Reaper's scythe at any moment, Chimera Squad's named heroes offer something a bit unique, and it hits and misses. First, for a game of this cost and how it's made with some of the character stories intertwining with the game's plot, I don't mind that they did it. I like the idea of these characters having a past with a variety of ill wills driven and bad guys you face and good guys you meet again. It does add a bit of personality to the story. I said a bit because, damn, there is not a lively one in the bunch. They're so bland, their subtitles should be beige. The smaller levels, some of them are very small, so be warned. While the game does offset this with numerous 2 or 3 stage encounters and some enemy waves with reinforcements, there were a couple really small, tight locations that I was able to get through quite quickly, even on the harder difficulty, by just sort of paying attention to what was going on. And it really does add an almost SWAT-style feeling to the game. Let's talk a little bit about difficulty. It doesn't feel incredibly balanced, especially at first, unless you turn that difficulty up right away. There's the Iron Man modes and so forth. You're trying to take care of the anarchy in the city by using special skills, and you have all these combinations of spec ops and various other abilities, and that makes the first half of going not really that hard. If you want a challenge, use those higher difficulties, but make sure you turn off healing between locations. That means if you have a mission with multiple locations, you will not heal between those. Doesn't really make a lot of sense anyway. That's the best way to probably play this. And how long are you going to play this? It is much longer than I thought it was going to be, but I wanted to jump around, do different things, and try out different builds. There was far more than I expected. Additionally, this does have mod support, so be aware of that. But was it fun all the way through? Well, that's the question. Chimera Squad is solidly as fun to me as XCOM 2. It's in a different way. It feels far more SWAT-ish than the other titles did because of the way it's set up. But that breach mechanic, the investigation mechanics, and just the way everything worked together, I really did enjoy it. And it's still got the core backbone of XCOM gameplay. Again, I would like to see the difficulty balanced a little bit. There were some oddities there. And the Android system, whatever. I know a lot of you guys are going to listen to the rating and turn it off instantly, but if you get a chance, stick around after the rating for something I have to say. So here we go. Buy, wait for a sale, rent, or never touch it again, with rent being replaced by deep sale and PC-only titles. And I would say this is probably a wait for a deep sale. And the reason is, of course, it's a buy. I'm sure somebody right now who doesn't like when I go, maybe subscribe, is also now going like, I hate this guy completely. I'm going to post about him everywhere. But seriously, the game's awesome. For this price, it's a complete surprise. It's got a ton of gameplay. It's got mod compatibility. It's got some issues with, difficulty, and certainly those voices are not good. Nevertheless, for this price, well worth it. And for anybody who's stuck this far into the video, I just want to say thanks to everybody. This has been an absolute blast. You guys' support is so cool. It's been a phenomenal ride, and I hope for it to continue. I was going to do something where I pretended to quit and become like an at-home circumcision expert, but I decided not to. Seriously, this has been such a great time. You guys, one of the things I want to say is, a lot of people are like, I can't support on Patreon. I got to say, if you get a chance to post it on Facebook or share it on Facebook or retweet it, that helps immensely, especially in the last couple months where this kind of stuff has gone crazy. People ask about CPM on YouTube. It's the lowest it's ever been. It's low enough that it's at the equivalent of 4 years ago. So patrons have absolutely helped, but just sharing it has helped, and people always ask that. So I wanted to point it out. Also, subscribing to ACG on Twitch as well as Spotify and iTunes really do help the channel. And jumping into the Patreon, we have had a huge influx. It's just been phenomenal. Every day it's been 7 or 8 new people having new discussions that I haven't met before. We did a huge meet and greet yesterday, which was insane to see people all around the world, where they're from and stuff like that. amazing community. But I just wanted to say, I hope you guys all stay safe out there. Keep on joking. People take shit way too serious these days. You got your Xbox XXXL and you got your PS5 Super SD coming out, and I know people are going to take that shit so serious that they're probably going to end up trying to fist fight in different places. There are many more things that matter, and if you don't know that, look outside. Anyway, that's it for me. Peace out. Enjoy the rest of your week.